Hey everyone, welcome back to the Hardware News Recap of the Week. In this one, following up our Intel Arrow Lake news, we'll be talking about the RTX 5070 rumors, Nintendo launching its Alarmo alarm clock, lawyers included, and Ubisoft getting sued. Maybe those two could collaborate on something. Further, we'll be talking about X870E Motherboards at Noctua's new-ish fan, Thermal Grizzly's new WireView, and I got this shirt right in time for the intro and for the Ubisoft story we're inserting. That was not intentional. Normally, I would reread that and say inserting, but it works, so we're gonna go with it. Let's get into the news. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Fractal North and Fractal North XL cases. These cases brought wood front panel accents to the market while still maintaining relatively high airflow and good thermal performance in our testing. The North series has optional all mesh or glass side panels, offering choices for build configurations. They also have color-matched accents between the white and black cases, with the wood likewise matched for the theme. Learn more at the links in the description below. All right, before we get into hardware news, we are doing a charity drive for hurricane relief. This is a little bit serious story, but we're trying to do some good here. So many of you have likely heard of the hurricane that recently ravaged the eastern coast of the United States. This also includes the state that we are headquartered in. And some famous stories in this community from the hurricane include those of LGR, if you are familiar with his YouTube channel. Our home state has also been heavily affected by this, and we wanted to figure out something we could do, so here's what it is. So this is a preview of a charity shirt design that we are sending to production right now for sampling, with 100% of the profit from the shirt getting split between a few different organizations related to hurricane relief in our home state. This is posting to store.gamersaccess.net now. It's already there if you want to grab it. We've made these before. The Australia shirt one that we did, if I remember correctly, I think we ended up donating around 20 grand to different wildlife charities during the bushfires in 2020, and all of that was because of purchases through the community. We did the same thing, donated all the shirt money basically to the charities. So at the time, that was our fastest selling design ever, and we wanted to do that again to provide some funding for hurricane relief groups. The shirt features several North Carolina state symbology items like the state flag colored outline, the silhouette, including the emblem of the state bird, which is the cardinal, across the Piedmont. And the state is surrounded by our hardware heart design that we use for these special shirts. This one uses liquid cooling tubes and power supply cables to form it, with computer and gaming hardware scattered around the state. The back features a one-off GN logo with state iconography like dogwood tree flowers, the infamous gray squirrel, and our mountains. Now we know Florida is also getting hit really hard right now too. I was just talking with Joe Stepanzi, aka Bearded Hardware. He lives out there. He had to leave the area because he's like would be right in the middle of it. So unfortunately, we're limited at our size with how many people we can help. We checked with him though, just because he's a person in the industry many of you are familiar with, and fortunately he is okay and has left the area. I posted this on Twitter. A huge amount of people from the industry were messaging me asking how we were doing. We're all good. So the hurricane did come through here. Fortunately, the most we got was just a lot of water. So it was one of those situations where at most there could have been flooding that might have damaged the floors. Fortunately, we put things in place to prevent all of that, so we're good to go. Everything worked as it was designed to, and there was no damage on our side. So we're fine. Unfortunately, that is not the case for tens of thousands of people who were in the path of the hurricane, and that includes thousands who are really not that far from us. So in our state in particular, Asheville is probably one of the more famous cities. If you're in the US, you may have heard of it. Towns like Banner Elk, Boone, these are places that I personally go during the summer for mountain biking. So I've been to a lot of these places, and there's footage online showing just entire towns being basically wiped off the face of the map with buildings floating away. So it's wild to see that amount of natural disaster damage happen so close. It's probably been about 20 years since I've seen anything like that here. So anyway, I just recently sent an email off to Seth from Burn Peak to ask how we can help. The answer was that it is very difficult to help right now unless you're already on the ground there, because a lot of the inroads to places like Asheville have been destroyed. So that's where we come to the next best thing, which is trying to raise money for the groups who are already on the ground there and know what they're doing. We wanted a repeat of the Australia shirt idea, and this time to help our immediate neighbors. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to take orders for this North Carolina themed t-shirt for hurricane relief. 100% of the profits go to these three groups. One is United Way of Asheville, One is the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina's Disaster Relief Fund, and finally, the Humane Society of Asheville. United Way and Community Foundation Disaster Relief Fund are both officially recognized by Buncombe County, which is one of the counties heavily affected by flooding and dealing with loss of life as a result. So because they are recognizing those groups as being helpful, we chose to give to them. The county has publicized that these two have direct effort going into on-the-ground work. The funding stays local as we understand it, so that's good as well. And these two organizations will directly help people who need shelter, food, rescue, and support during losses from the flooding. As for the Humane Society of Asheville, that one directly supports those with pets, animals, and has deployed animal rescue and distribution of supplies for those who have evacuated or are in shelter with their pets. I chose this one for a couple reasons. The first is that the first two groups are helping people. The second is that I personally care a lot about animal rescue. We've done this in the past, and I first learned of Humane Society when a late viewer's mother emailed us several years ago about her loss. I asked what charities did he like, and I made a donation, and we've done that regularly ever since. So now is a good time to really up it and do more than we have in the past. They seem to do good work from what I've seen. So, all right, so because this wasn't planned for, we are taking the orders. We're gonna make them after we take all the orders, and that means we'll collect orders for a couple weeks. Shipping estimate will be on the store website on store.gamersnexus.net. We anticipate it'll be about a month or so, maybe plus or minus 2 weeks there, to actually start shipping them out. If you'd like to just donate to these groups and you don't need another shirt, that is totally fine with me. You can do that at the links in the description below. And then actually our shirt printer, Vermont Green Printing, which they do a phenomenal job on quality consistently, they are going to knock a little bit off of the total cost, so we can maximize what we're giving away. So, and then actually our distributor has been in talks with me too. We're trying to get some level of matching from a bunch of different people. So anyway, I'll have more news on that soon. If you order multiple items, we're gonna end up holding the order to ship it all at once. That's just because you will only pay for shipping one time. If we pay for it twice, we're gonna lose money that we're trying to give away. So if you order a couple things, then hang tight for a little bit till the shirts go out, and then everything will go with it. And then additionally, I'm currently putting out some phone calls to people in the industry, see if I can get anyone to match if they've got budget for it. I actually know that Arctic, they just messaged me this morning and said that they are shipping supplies from their South Carolina warehouse really close to North Carolina towns to support, which was awesome to hear from them as well. So anyway, that's kind of it for the charity story. You can go to the site if you want to buy one. You can go to the description if you want to just give money. You know, hopefully we can do some good here. So let's go to the news. All right, first up, really simple one. The rumor mill spun back up in the last week about NVIDIA. It's all about them.
That's NVIDIA.
NVIDIA's 5070 is now rumored. It's a really simple one. We'll keep it as short as possible. So, NVIDIA is hosting the official keynote at CES next year. That's the first week of January 2025. This is news that's confirmed. In years past, including actually 2024 with the Super Series, NVIDIA has launched GPUs around CES. It doesn't show them as often as it used to, but it does definitely still launch stuff. So the rumor, via WCCF Tech, the new claim is that NVIDIA will announce the 5090, 5080, and 5070 at CES for the Consumer Electronics Show. The rumor publication suggested that the 5070 will receive the 12 gigabyte treatment, keeping with NVIDIA's trend of running short on VRAM below the top of the stack. Existing rumors of 16 gigabyte 5080s already suggest a potentially limited selection of GPUs for VRAM-heavy prosumers, though there were some suggestions previously that there may be two models of 5080. If I remember correctly, one of those was a kind of a flash-in-the-pan rumor that popped up after the original 5080 memory rumors of potentially a 24 gigabyte model or something like that in addition to the 16. Whatever the case, obviously we have to just wait and see what it is, but currently it does really feel, as just some commentary, feel like NVIDIA is looking at, okay, this top of the stack, it might be time to kind of break this off and just say this is prosumer, this is replacing like Titan type stuff, or Quadro for people who don't need the driver validation, whatever. That's kind of where it looks like they're going. Now it's basically the 4080 and the 4080 12 gigabyte treatment that we got previously before they unlaunched the 4080 12 and branded it as a 70 Ti. But in the very least, there are two distinct names with these two. So we'll see how all that goes. All right, next up, Nintendo has announced an alarm clock. We're gonna play a clip from Nintendo's official YouTube channel for you. Ah, right. Nintendo has sent a message about using its footage for things, so makes it a little difficult to talk about Nintendo. Well, we're gonna do it anyway, because my lawyer says this is fair use, and they can talk to him if they disagree. As for how it actually works, the alarm clock uses motion sensors to track your movement and then plays video game sounds, like coin collection. Waking up to coin collection sounds and other video game positive sound effects ensures our future dopamine addictions are so strong from the very start of the day that you're setting yourself up for sadness by chemically re-architecting your brain so that the need for increasing amounts of dopamine hits is so high that it's tough to even get out of bed to turn the alarm off in the first place. I love our future dystopia.
Wake up, Link.
The alarm clock is $100. It requires, according to the store page, Nintendo Switch Online, and it has 35 scenes from Nintendo. These are music and game sound effects that are based on different intellectual properties that Nintendo owns and will make sure you know it. It automatically turns off when you walk away from it, providing the comfort knowing that Nintendo is always watching. But that's actually the alarm clock's secret function. Like many of Nintendo's games, there's a secret level. If you snooze it too long and you don't get out of bed, they'll eventually send lawyers to your house for an in-person wake-up call. After seeing this, we thought it'd be interesting if some of Nintendo's peers in the space make alarm clocks. So we sent Blizzard a message, and we asked them when they plan to sell their own alarm clock in the older-fashioned form that you set on the bedside table. Here's what they said.
Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
Speaking of hell, Ubisoft, after plummeting stock performance the last long period of time, rumors began swirling about a potential buyout of Ubisoft to save it from its impending doom. This week, the company published a press release simply stating that it will inform the public if it decides to change course, basically. There's not much to it. They didn't confirm or deny or really much acknowledge the rumors. As for why this might have seemed necessary, taking a look at the stock probably helps at least give us some perspective. In the last 6 months, Ubisoft's stock got cut roughly in half. On October 4th, Bloomberg published a story suggesting Ubisoft might consider a buyout. Reviewing the last 5 days of stock prices from the time of writing this, you can see that Ubisoft's stock, relative only to its own price prior, skyrocketed. We don't know whether that's related to the Bloomberg story or not, but in either case, the volatile movement likely triggered Ubisoft's corporate response. Now, Ubisoft has earned the position it's in. It's fumbled game after game for years now. It took all of its toys and went to Uplay, only to come crawling back to Steam recently. And even just the Uplay platform, it treated me like a pirate. When I paid money for games, I swapped some hardware and like took away access or something. I don't really remember the details anymore. All I remember is that I said, okay, I'm not buying anything on this anymore. And I'm sure plenty of people have had their own negative experiences with Uplay over the years. So the company has been on a downward trend for a while now. Not long ago, it was in the news for telling consumers they should just get used to the idea of not owning video games, and started talking more about streaming, game streaming, and the growth of it, going for the Netflix model, except in gaming, which definitely seems like there's going to be a lot of corporate pressure to do, but you're not supposed to say the quiet part out loud, Ubisoft. So currently, Ubisoft is reaping what it has sown, but it has at least responded to the comments in the last week. And this isn't explicitly hardware, but Ubisoft is a huge player in the space. It's gaming. Gaming's interesting to us and to a lot of you, so we'll keep following their whatever it is they think they're doing right now and let you know. Speaking of reaping what it has sown, Ubisoft, again, lawyers this time. So I'm in a different shirt because it's a different day, so it's a different Ubisoft story. A public court filing details a class action complaint in California against Ubisoft. The class action states this, quote, "The website allows users to pay a recurring fee to gain access to a Ubisoft Plus subscription, which gives subscribers access to games so long as the subscription is maintained. Defendant, or Ubisoft, does not disclose on the website that users' personally identifying information, or PII, would be captured by the Meta Platforms Incorporated or Facebook tracking pixel, and then transferred to Meta, thereby exposing the subscriber's PII to any person of ordinary technical skill who received that data. Defendant does not seek and has not obtained consent from PII users to utilize the Pixel to track, share, and exchange their PII with Facebook. Now, the filing makes a number of references to U.S. law, including heavily the Wiretap Act and the Video Privacy Protection Act. Currently, the class action complainants are seeking indeterminate damages. It's not fully defined yet, and presumably they are recruiting more complainants to join the class action. So key complaints in this 46-page document include points that Ubisoft shares browser and other events with Facebook, insinuating that there may be a link between the user's Facebook account and Uplay account, and that this information can be exchanged between the platforms for advertising. Page 18 of the complaint includes an example where searching for the division on the Ubisoft store ends up disclosing data to Meta via the Facebook Pixel. Pages 20 to 22 describe a pretty typical e-commerce development practice. It basically says it monitors whether the item's actually purchased after being added to the cart. This part we don't think is that strange, but the issue arises on page 24, where they start to develop their argument that the FR cookie notes inclusion of an encrypted Facebook ID and browser ID, which can then be used to tie Ubisoft Store searching behavior to the user's online advertising profile, and presumably Ubisoft Store purchasing and account patterns as well. In what feels truly threatening to Ubisoft, though, the lawyers themselves are the ones who replicated this behavior on their own Facebook profile and included a screenshot of it in the complaint just for Ubisoft to get that extra scare. Now, Ubisoft's obviously going to need some lawyers immediately, like really fast. And so what we think they should do is buy the Nintendo Alarmo, set it up, put an unlicensed Pikachu poster on the wall over the bed, and then within normally a couple of minutes, plus or minus, some lawyers should show up at the door. You'd probably consult them for help. Up next, Thermal Grizzly has launched several new products. So they have an updated WireView, and they also have updated micro blocks for their water cooling solutions. And they also have some consumables for system prep. The new WireView Pro GPU power consumption measurement display and logging device, which probably condenses to just a single word auf Deutsch, is developed in collaboration with pro overclocker and general hardware wizard Elmore. It's priced at $76. We've previously toured Elmore's lab in Taiwan and showed how he engineers some of the more unique solutions in the industry, including a lot that we use. The WireView Pro is an update to the existing design with new features, including detection of sideband pins to determine if the 12-volt high power or 12-volt 2x6 connectors are fully plugged in. It also has temperature sensing at the power connectors and hookups for external temperature sensors, which are included. There's also an audible alarm that'll sound when an incorrect cable is installed, the cable isn't properly connected, or when user-designated current or temperature limits are breached. These changes add a level of practicality to the device for users who might be interested in a warning system along with the measurement capabilities. Next up are refreshes to the Thermal Grizzly Micro Direct Dye Water Block solutions, which require delidding for use. If you've never heard of delidding, it's removing the heat spreader. This is something that was actually a really huge sort of subset of the industry back when Intel was using just paste for everything. You can go check our video on the exploding 7800X3D CPUs from last year for a more recent take on this. There's a section where we demonstrate an easy method to delid these particular AM5 CPUs. Special tools also exist. The exploding silicon part is optional. The new blocks have Pro appended to their names with some upgrades, and they cost $142. The AMD version has significant modifications, which Thermal Grizzly claims results in a 9 degrees Celsius drop versus the original AMD Micro. First of all, Thermal Grizzly, thank you for just saying 9 degrees Celsius and not doing what Razer did. Secondly, that is a huge change if it actually, this is the big if true meme. We haven't tested or validated it. So that would theoretically allow the CPU to reach higher clock speeds depending on which specific Ryzen CPU you might be using, and its power configuration, what other limits it has, or its boosting behavior. So it'll vary based on the model and the specific sample. But the theory is that you maybe get some extra performance out of it. Mostly it's just going to be cooler. The most interesting change is to the cold plate. The cold plate features a hybrid fin structure that corresponds to areas of lower and higher heat generation across the CPU package. The area over the I/O die has shallow grooves with wide spacing, and the area over the CCDs has deep grooves with tight spacing. Other changes include thinning the cold plate overall and tweaks throughout the block to optimize for flow. The updated Intel version of the Micro features a uniform fin structure, but Thermal Grizzly claims 6 degrees Celsius lower temperatures versus its predecessor due to various similar upgrades. Last, Thermal Grizzly launched a set of 2-stage cleaning wipes for thorough prep of surfaces before applying paste or liquid metal, as well as pre-cut sheets of Kapton tape for electrically insulating components around the die to protect from conductive tamp. Now, frankly, the cleaning wipes, I just use blue shop towel and some rubbing alcohol, and that'll get the job done. The most anticipated hardware event of the year just happened, and it was right under our noses. We didn't even notice it. Didn't even know it was gonna happen. Invite got lost in the mail. Now, this event is, of course, for gamers.
We understand that every gamer, yes, you gamer out there,
Me? It's like they're talking right to me. Now, RazerCon 2024 is the latest brainwashing event of the wannabe Apple of the gaming hardware space. Razer this time unveiled haptic chair ass pads, and it also had a really expensive laptop cooler. Now, we're gonna look at the Asshaptics first.
but what if you could feel it?
So the As Vibrational Freya is connected by a power wire, giving that tethered gaming experience we all want. You might be worried about tripping and rolling over a cable attached to your rolling chair with wheels, but Razer solves even the problems that it itself must create.
Where the cable simply disconnects. If someone trips over it,
Now, as for the price, like the snake that Razer brands itself as, it tried to trick us all.
you would think it would go for $999. Nope, how about $499? Nope, just $299.
That's right, the Razer Freya can be in your hands and under your ass for just $300. Or in other words, the cost of a well-designed office chair if buying used, from one of the many corporate layoffs happening somewhere near you right now. You might even be able to get Herman Miller at that price used from Microsoft or Intel. The new Freya Asshaptic device is a pad that you strap to your chair. It has multiple vibrating elements, and it's intended to connect with video game events, videos, music, to provide feedback in real time. Examples included spell casting and Hogwarts. We'll let Razer describe what these things do.
As you feel the intensity of the attack, concentrating at your waist, then your chest and leg.
Okay, I gotta stop them there. I'm not sure where this is going, but rather not be demonetized right now. So Razer says that the haptic ass pad increases immersion, and it also says,
Now, let's dive deeper into what makes Razer Freya such a revolutionary product covering immersion, form factor, and last but not least, connectivity.
and by innovative connectability, they actually mean that there is a barrel plug that you can disconnect for the power to the chair. It's true innovation. No one has ever seen a disconnectable plug before. This is the final product version of the Project Esther that the company showcased at CES back in January. Razer made a huge deal out of the history and implementation of haptics, and including a 3D model with the hands ready on those gamer keys, commonly known as F1 through F4, I guess. Classic gamer position. Razer really knows us. The Freya does not include a chair, but rather a pad that can go on chairs. Razer says it uses 2.4 gigahertz wireless, and if you're worried about smothering the signal on it, we're just waiting for the Razer suppository device that they'll be shipping later. Almost made it through that one. It also has BLE and Swift pairing. Unfortunately, it connects to Razer's Synapse application, and our last experience with that was getting a lot of emails about breaches. But at least Razer is somewhat self-aware.
You know you can focus on getting your ass kicked. Literally.
Next up at RazerCon was the new adaptive smart cooling pad for 14 to 18-inch laptops. It's $150, and it comes with swappable foam frames to form a seal between the intake air chamber at the bottom of the laptop. The pad has RGB, because of course it does, and it connects via USB and is controlled via software that monitors system temperature, ramping the included fan up to 2,550 RPM, just in case you want that server room atmosphere. Razer claims the cooler can drop CPU and GPU temperature by up to 18%. Do we have to do this again? Razer? Viewers of this channel for a couple years have seen this rant a couple times now, and we're just gonna do it again. Okay, so that doesn't mean anything. Calculating a percentage for the difference in temperature here is at best misleading, and that's because degrees Celsius is a non-zero arbitrary scale ultimately representing energy. And what they're doing here is producing a percentage that will be different depending on what scale you use. None of this accounts for the actual change in thermal energy. Here's a thought experiment. So Razer's saying 18%. Let's just convert it into Kelvin to prove the point. If you take 100 degrees Celsius and you convert it into Kelvin, you're looking at 373.15. These are ultimately representing the exact same thing. We're just using a different way of representing it, which yields different numbers. 373.15, and if you are showing an 18% drop, that would bring it down to 305.983 Kelvin. So let's convert it all back into Celsius. That'd be 100 degrees Celsius for the 373.15, and then the 305.983, which was yielded from the 18% reduction that Razer claimed here, would result in converting it back 2 degrees Celsius, 32.8 degrees Celsius, using a different scale. This is precisely why this is wildly misleading. So to Razer, do you see? It's a degrees Celsius joke. The problem? Well, this is a mistake we've brought up a lot in marketing. I know this mistake because I made this one 14 years ago when I posted one of my first thermal analysis videos to the internet from my bedroom in my mom's house. So Razer's a big enough company, it should know at this point. But we do like to point it out every time large companies say these things because it is just misleading for consumers. And if they are, in fact, able to bring it from 100 degrees Celsius down to 32.8, then we need to tell NASA immediately what this alien technology is. Although I guess that it's a different gamer company that has the aliens. But moving on. To round the show off, Razer couldn't help but attempt a one more thing moment, harkening back to the year
2005.
2005. Even innovating how to say years. In an actual heart-touching moment, Razer paid tribute to co-founder Robert Krakoff, who passed away in 2022. Razer CEO Min-Lian Tan said that the 20th anniversary edition Boomslang mouse is to pay tribute to the late co-founder Krakoff, reprising the company's first ever gaming mouse. There aren't many details yet, but Razer wants to use the original Boomslang iconic shape and retrofit it with new technology. Of everything Razer showed, this mouse is probably among the most interesting to us, mostly because we're really curious to see how an older style chassis and design from an era before all the refinements to the ergonomics would feel with new sensors and tracking and technology. AMD's board partners have now basically fully released the X870, X870E boards with the new chipset. Of course, as for why right now, absolutely nobody knows why AMD might right now choose to release them. We can't think of any reasons why now might be a good time. There are too many boards out there to go over in full detail, so we'll do a flyover of some that we consider a little more notable for one reason or another. First off, if you're already on AM5 with the 600 series board, there's really no major reason to upgrade unless you hate your specific board. The biggest difference is USB 4.0 now being mandatory in some of these configurations, and slight differences in which PCIe lanes are guaranteed to be Gen 5. The cheapest new board at the time of writing is the ASRock X870 Pro RS for $200. The board has a 14+2+1 power design. Gigabyte's X870 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ICE is $290. It's the least expensive board we can find with a 7-segment postcode readout at the time of writing this. Hitting $300 is the MSI MAG X870 Tomahawk Wi-Fi with 4 M.2 slots. These names are really long. 5 gigabit LAN, a 7-segment display, which is nice to see, and acid yellow-green accents reminiscent of the Gigabyte Sniper motherboards. The Asus TUF Gaming X870 Plus Wi-Fi is $310, has similar feature set to the Strix boards in some ways, but a lower price point. Next is the ASRock X870E Nova Wi-Fi for $350. Has an array of high-end specs, but we're actually including it because we think it has the most interesting look. I actually kind of like that deviation. There are large areas of purple and blue, and we like it when motherboard makers get bold with color since everything else is generally a sort of monochromatic scale with some RGB sprinkled on top. We'll also throw a quick mention of the Taichi Lite because it's basically a flagship board with all the flashy stuff stripped out of it. It's the opposite end. Asus has the only new ITX board with photos right now, but it's not for sale at the time of writing. It's called the ROG Strix X870i Gaming Wi-Fi and is very similar to the other recent ROG ITX boards. Finally, Asus has the most expensive new board, because of course it does, with the ROG Crosshair X870E Hero at $700. We generally don't recommend boards like this unless you're looking to get into extreme overclocking and you know it has some necessary feature that you could really use, or it has some advantage in memory compatibility that you need. And just a quick note here too, for newer builders, you might see the 800 series boards launching near the time of the 9000 series CPUs and think that they are required for compatibility. They're not. You can use the 600 series platforms for the 9000 series CPUs, and it's very unlikely you're gonna notice anything missing. AMD does have a pretty good chipset comparison table on its site, and probably the people who need that 800 series are going to notice it. Again, USB 4 is kind of the most obvious mandatory difference with some of those boards. So you can save a lot of money by going with the technically previous generation chipset. Just want people to be aware of that because probably a lot of people who are newer won't realize it. All right, up next, Team Group is launching high-speed DDR5 with both Intel XMP and AMD Expo profiles on the board. It calls this dual mode DDR5. They'll be available in 8 SKUs from DDR5 6400 to 8000. Having both XMP and Expo profiles on one physical kit of memory isn't new, but these kits distinguish themselves by offering DDR5 8000 for both types of profile at the same time. DDR5 kits can support up to 5 profiles, 3 from the vendor, and 2 user configurable. We just don't often see more than 1 or 2 set by the vendor. Up next, Noctua has finally launched the square or normal version of its 140mm fan design with standard square frame called the NF A14x25 G2. So this is kind of the desktop variant of what we found on the D15 G2 we reviewed. Noctua wrote this, quote, "After almost a decade of development work, we're proud of the substantial performance uplift that we have managed to achieve with this fan." Now again, the round version of this was included on the D15 G2. You can check out our review video if you want to see that. The new fans incorporate Noctua's recent advancement in blade shape, which it calls the, quote, "progressive bend impeller with winglets, flow acceleration channels, and centrifugal turbulator hub." We sent Noctua a message to ask if its progressive bend impeller with winglets and its centrifugal turbulator could accommodate a crudely conceived idea of an instrument that would provide inverse reactive current for use with unilateral phase detractors. Noctua said this.
Now basically, the only new principle involved is that instead of power being generated by the relative motion of conductors and fluxes, it's produced by the modial interaction of magneto-reluctance and capacitive diractance.
These guys are always innovating. The hub is interesting because Noctua claims that the raised features encourage air movement away from the hub and towards the actual blade area, which they say boosts overall airflow. These also contain Noctua's latest motor design that it calls ETA Perf, which runs an internal feedback loop with a Hall effect sensor to ensure the fan stays at the desired RPM. In situations of higher resistance or back pressure, the motor will automatically apply more power to keep it at the speed. The new fans have an RPM range of 0 to 1500 and are priced at $40 each. Or if it's a set of 2, it's $77, which is a lot for some fans. And they keep the 25 RPM space, and we talked about in our interviews back at Computex and in the D15 G2 review. This is a low speed version that tops out at 800 RPM, and if you wanted to go crazy, you could buy something like a Mora 420 Pro, put 18 of them on it, and end up with $692 in fans alone. And adding the actual Mora itself would make it a $1,000 cooler, not accounting for the pump and everything else. Interestingly, again, because of the speed control, the 2 fans in a pack of 2 will have a 25 RPM offset, which is supposed to resolve some of the unpleasant acoustic characteristics we've talked about in interviews before. In situations where 3 fans will be beside each other, Noctua recommends using the pair of offset fans plus 1 regular version set to operate at the speed of the slower fan. They say you would put the faster one in the middle then, and the 2 slower ones on either end. Now, of course, you could also achieve this by monitoring the speeds yourself, making minor adjustments to try and account for whatever noise might be bothering you. So that's it for hardware news. Thanks for watching, as always, and catching up for the week. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab one of these shirts. We're gonna take orders only for a couple of weeks before we place the shirt order itself, once we know the quantity to order, and donate all the money that's raised through it, and we'll update you all with what that amount is and who else we can kind of get involved. So we'll keep you posted on it, but you can grab one on the store right now. It's already up. And then otherwise, check out our Arrow Lake coverage if you want to learn more about Intel's new upcoming Ultra 200 CPUs. We've got 2 case reviews coming up and plenty more. One of the cases in particular is actually incredibly interesting, but I can't talk about it yet. But that'll be on the channel soon. We'll see you all next time.